It was a creed written into the founding documents that declared the destiny of a nation. Yes, we can. It was whispered by slaves and abolitionists as they blazed the trail toward freedom. Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
It was sung
by immigrants as they struck out to distant shores, pioneers who pushed westward against unforgiving wilderness. Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
It was the call of workers organized, women who reached for the ballots, a president who chose the moon as our new frontier,
and a king who took us to the mountaintop and pointed the way to the promised land.
Yes, we can to justice and equality.
Yes.
This is a special presentation from WBRN Radio in Boston and over the Boston Red Network in the great condition of Politics Sunday. At one time, our legendary co-host Jerry Pippin and I used to host. We're thinking of bringing that program back, but today our special topic here is it's in the buzz. Donna pours hot sauce on the DNC and Hillary the Monster Clinton. There has been much ado about Donna Brazile's new book, Hacked. Some people have, as they say, attacked it and attacked Donna Brazile, but Donna Brazile's been out there for almost 50 years. She's been in politics since she was literally a juvenile. We first met Donna Brazile, don't know Donna Brazile personally, but at the 20th anniversary march in 1983 of the March on Washington. She was backstage waiting to speak. She was a member of some youth group, don't remember which youth group it was, but she spoke before, right after the Honorable Louis Farrakhan of Chicago. Minister Farrakhan, of course, they put him at the back of the line, and she was back at the line there, but he brought the crowd to its feet, and so did Donna. That was before she took on as a principal strategist, for those that recall that, in the 2000 campaign of Albert Gore Jr. of Tennessee. Donna won that campaign. She was not responsible for the thievery that came about. There was much commotion, and there were people, obviously, with a racist mindset, but felt that Donna would have not made the best strategist, but she proved that she knew how to run a national campaign. Now, this particular campaign, what follows us is an interview with George Stephanopoulos, who was in the Clinton campaign. He was there at the Meteor pot. He is a right-of-center person. Now, let's get some arguments out of the way here. There are those that say that, well, the U.S. is a right-of-center country. Perhaps so. We've looked at a lot of polling out here. The U.S., and as far as its right-of-centerness is, that is where the body politic takes it. They refer back to Bill Clinton's centrist type of campaign that he ran. Well, he ran out of Arkansas, what Rockefeller called, that was Winfred, the land of opportunity, and of course it was a right-to-work state and still is. Not a lot of opportunity there, not a lot of land. But the principal situation there, you're running right of center, that was in the early 90s after Reagan. Reagan came out of California, spurred by the Birches, and as they say, the icing on the cake was the rebellions in Los Angeles, the rebellions on college campus, a true speech, free speech movement, not this candy-coated scam that's run now. That was against the authorities at Berkeley and various universities. Now it is not against the authorities. These right-wing fascists are guarded by the authorities, and their so-called speech is against the highest and best hopes of the American people. Make no doubt about that. But back to this right-of-centerness. What happened in Clinton's campaign for president in 1992, the country was a different country, period. But at the same, after the 8 years of Reagan and of George H.W. Bush. But there was a third candidate in there by the name of Ross Perot out of Texarkana, Texas. Ross Perot was not necessarily as much of a libertarian as a traditional hard conservative. He believed in such things as deficits, and he had charts. He was a business person, came out of the IBM shop at one time, formed a Perot Systems, sold a computer system, software, etc., got a big healthy contract out in California, literally to computerize what was at the time called the welfare system out there. That's how he made his money. He finally got onto the board of General Motors, of all things, and General Motors was America. It was a big corporation at the time, not some also ran as it is today. But nonetheless, he was a very influential person. He was a multi-millionaire, and he ran for president. And he had his own party that he put together himself. You could do that because he had the financial resources. What happened in that election was Ross Perot got enough of the right vote and to give Bill Clinton the victory. In fact, we can recall very vividly, he announced the victory of William Jefferson Clinton from Dallas, Texas, on the night of the election. He had disliked the Bush clan, and to the day, no doubt about it. So that was what brought the election to Bill Clinton. But Bill Clinton was Perot from the right, and George H.W. Bush from, at that time, what would have been called the moderate, because, again, he came after the right-wing government of Ronald Wilson Reagan. I can recall on the day after Reagan was first elected, Richard Milhous Nixon was on Good Morning America, and he stated very clearly that he was a conservative, but he was not a nut. So he considered the Reagan people nuts. If he were alive today and see the present gang running around here, he would no doubt expand upon nuttery. But this is what happens when you go with a right-of-center approach, as some people advocate. It does not work. It did not work in 1992. Now, on Clinton's re-election was a typical different situation. He ran against Bob Dole of Kansas. Dole ran a lackluster campaign at the time. He's still alive, but he was an elder statesman even at that time. But then that was a traditional Republican campaign. But you also have to remember that during Clinton's foreign policy was Woodrow Wilson racist foreign policy. There's no doubt about that, where they were fomenting all kinds of quote-unquote wars there. And that set the stage after 2 terms of Bill Clinton. And yes, there was some prosperity there. We had the internet operation coming out. So in other words, they used something to create an economy. The economy was created, a bubble later burst there. On the G.W. Bush, when G.W. Bush was elected, G.W. Bush went back to the Reagan's trickle-down scheme, almost lost the economy the first time around, and then 9/11 saved him. He came up with a massive behemoth called Homeland Security, the largest of all government agencies, the mother of all, as one would say. And then he had all these wars that he did not pay for those wars. Now, that was an extension of the racist Woodrow Wilson foreign policy, this adventurism in the Mideast, the expansion of the settlements by the Zionists. All this played into what they call the right of center. Now, in the election of 2016, running up there, DJ Trump's whole thing was draining the swamp, which would have been more of a populist type of situation, moving away from the Wilsonian foreign policy and moving back to the traditional Republican policy of isolationism. Now, that in itself would have alleviated some of this adventurism, but what happened with DJ Trump, he has now got adventurism going on in Niger. He's got it going on the Korean Peninsula. And the situation there is not what it would normally be. First of all, that is on the borders of the Russian Federation, how much they will put up with that, and also on the borders of China. The Red Army has tools, and so does the Russian Federation. Their rocket forces are equal to or superior to the U.S. All they would need to simply tell DJ Trump is, look, if you attack whom he calls Rocket Man, a smart cookie, a little rocket man, we will attack you. You will have a World War III. And these idiots that he has for generals, ex-generals around there, like Kelly, those are the results of quote-unquote a right-of-center country. Now, Donna Brazile's book, Hacked, is very important in that she exposes this business-as-usual attitude, and it parallels with some things Hillary Monster Clinton has said herself, in that she talked about the dysfunctionality of the DNC. Now, let's go back in the history a little bit there. When Barack Obama ran for president in 2007, the DNC was there. It was willy-nilly. It basically was not a national party. It was starting to set the stage for the Republicans to take over all of these seats out there because they were not active on a 50-state strategy. Now, that did change under Howard Dean, but at the same time, that was what Barack Obama found. So he had to sustain the DNC, build his own parallel organization, which he did, to win the presidency. Well, he won the presidency. But the DNC was still there, and it was still dysfunctional, and President Obama got his resources into his organizing for change, which was well needed there. But we start to see, and we see this very, very clearly with DJ Trump. There was an article I was looking at Real Clear Politics about the Trump, was it the Washington Post? Anyway, about the Trump running as basically a third-party president. Well, no doubt about that. None of the Bushes, they are solid rocks of the Republican Party, voted for DJ Trump. So DJ Trump built his own coalition based upon the Burfers and various other things. He used those as a base, disenfranchised people that had been out of the economic system, meaning for over 20 years. Because in areas of Michigan, if you recall back when the courthouse in Oklahoma City, and Branch Davidians, etc., you had militias running around Michigan. Well, that feeds on a right-of-center culture. So now these people that run around here willy-nilly talking about right-of-center have created alt-right. And alt-right is marching saying we will not be displaced. So in other words, they moved from the traditional Republican situation back with Nixon. They encouraged these ethnic groups, which were fascists, to rally around their party. They went to Mississippi and those places, talked about busing, talked about states' rights. Well, this is the same thing. This is what a right-of-center operation is. Bill Clinton talked about welfare reform. That's code words for forget the Africans. I cleaned that up a little bit. The NAACP on busing had an interesting pamphlet out there about what the whole busing thing. You don't hear about that now because it costs too damn much to bus people. But it was a basic strategy to get the niggers. No doubt about it. And this is what this is all about. And this is what the cement is, or the glue to the strategy. Now, to the hard facts of DMC. That crowd that Hillary Clinton had there on the muck and all those characters that were quote-unquote analytically driven, they perhaps were, but they had bad analytics. And I re-emphasize bad analytics. Now, the Mercer operation, which incidentally was in San Antonio, Texas, had better analytics. Period. But their models were much, much closer there. Now you have this other card out there that they talk about, well, what the Russian hackers did and what the Russian hackers did not do. That is a side issue. There were a lot of hackers running around out there. And as Mr. Assange said at WikiLeaks, the Russian hackers did not deliver the information to him. And in Donna Brazile's book, she talks about Sepp and his death, which has not been solved today. And she also talks about when she was at the DNC, she kept the blinds closed. She was feared somebody would assassinate her. and she's telegraphing there that for our impression we got, she was not necessarily talking about the Russians, but that's in speculative there. She had security systems put in her house, new security systems, her house swept for bugs, and talking about she was hacked, and she had, 8, 9, 10, who knows, email accounts out there. No doubt she was watched by some of the same prying eyes. Now, our theory is there are all kinds of hackers running around there. There were hackers that represented other parties, including the notorious Hillary the Monster Clinton, Crooked Hillary Empire. It was all there. This is the normal business in these campaigns. They've been doing this stuff since I Like Ike. Political sabotage, tricksters, etc. out there. And you saw that run rapid for those around during the Watergate period. So nothing is new here. But what happened with the DNC was sheer arrogance. These characters had taken over there, and Brazile came in. They did not listen to Donna Brazile. They treated her with disrespect, as she said, like a slave. No doubt. But they also treated Big Dog, a.k.a. Bill Clinton. They did not listen to him either, because they just assumed that he was old hash. But the problem there was a little bit different. DJ Trump had targeted old hash. He targeted senior citizens. He targeted people in Pennsylvania, close to West Virginia, Kentucky, those areas, they all overlap. He targeted people in Michigan, in Wisconsin, and in Ohio. There were enough people in rural areas in Ohio for Trump to get a victory. Now, Trump was never behind, basically, in Ohio, but the Ohio Democratic Party has been gutted. And it's very, very difficult for the Ohio Party to win statewide elections. Now, what we do know is, as far as Bernie Sanders is concerned, that the poster for DJ Trump said that Sanders could win the election. There's no doubt about that. Now, as far as Donna Brazile wanting to replace the monster, that could have been done. That has happened before. For those that remember, a man out of St. Louis named Thomas Eagleton, when it came out that he'd had the electroshock treatments, he was replaced by George McGovern with Sergeant Stryver. But the whole situation is that can happen with what they say the advice and consent. But no doubt people were worried in the Democratic Party when the monster literally collapsed. The campaign had collapsed before that. She had walking pneumonia, but she came back. But at the same time, she was getting the advice of these characters there, Monk and his army of whatever you want to call them there, and he was very close with the funds. He did not put the proper funds and didn't have the proper outreach in a place like Wisconsin, which she needed to win, into Michigan, which she needed to win, and at the same time taking African Americans for granted. African Americans, known as the followers of O.J. Simpson, are the most sophisticated group in the entire country. No doubt about it. Now, there are other groups out there that have effective lobbying apparatus in Washington, such as the Zionists. But the Zionists, as far as DJ Trump is concerned, his administration speaks there. He put Bannon, Mr. Alt-Right, a fascist, and that's never been done, not at least an open one. And he's still got Miller there. So in other words, that has offset them. The only reason that they keep that thing going on with that right-wing government in Tel Aviv, which is itself a fascist government, Bibi Netanyahu, etc., is about a dirty capitalist scheme running there with the Saudis. Now, I notice they've started cleaning up the house with the corrupt ones, and some of those people are going to jail. So now what you've got is you've still got a global economy. You've got DJ Trump talking with these right-wingers in Japan. But then he would be forced to go on to China and look at the Red Army. Then he would go to Vietnam. Vietnam is a country that fought courageously against the American military machine and won out over it. So this is one thing to remember when you look at these fools like Kelly that are talking about Robert E. Lee being an honorable man. This is a clown that was in the military for 40 years and never won a war. If you ever see Kelly ask old General Kelly, which war did you ever win? He hasn't won anything. He's running around here talking about, well, we need more troops in Kabul, Afghanistan. I've been in Afghanistan forever and never won anything. Win an inch of ground and lose 10 miles or 10 meters. And so that's the thing. And now you get into such things as Syria. That was basically subcontracted out to V.I. Putin. And Putin sent in the Red Army, and the Red Army has chased ISIL out of there. But ISIS, according to some reports, has moved to the west side of Manhattan. Now, Trump said he was going to keep people safe. He hasn't kept anybody safe. And you have to understand the U.S. is a vast, vast country, period. But what he has done is, on this, quote-unquote, what they call right-of-center country, he's brought the fascists front and center. You have the alt-right people out running around demonstrating against, not for free speech. That has a damn thing to do with free speech. What it has to do with is attacks on people, as Madonna says. Whether they be people of color, whether they be other people, Jewish people, etc. That's what the whole candlelight and the march in the night. Now, that stuff used to happen in Indianapolis, Indiana, when the Klan was running amok. Period. They don't have the numbers, but they don't need them. They're on Facebook also. And when you get this whole thing about, well, why did, quote-unquote, these so-called Russian hackers were influencing groups there and putting ads, well, that they've been playing that game ever since social media has been up there. Before that, when we had very crude social media, before Twitter came in, and we call from the case of the Olympic hero Orenfeld James Simpson, but the right-wingers came in great numbers, and they were in various, like Alt-OJ, the groups, and they were doing the same thing. They had fake accounts, they had etc. They had trolls on steroids, as they call them. Well, they just moved over to Facebook. But you have to understand there's economic incentive there at Facebook. Facebook made a hell of a lot of money off of that, and so did Twitter for promoting these. And the people that are promoting many of these right-wing sites, they made money off of various affinity programs. So in other words, there's a little bit more to this than meets the eye. There was a lot of money to be made. There were all kinds of propagandists hired, as they were in 2007. We ran into those. The 2008 campaign was the most dirty, racist campaign out there. Again, that is back to the right-of-center nature. That the monster attacked President Obama based on a race amicus. And it was that simple. People didn't have anything to say about it other than, well, attacked him. And then Rush Limbaugh called his followers out to go and vote for the monster. Bill Clinton went down to Mississippi and ran a lot of racist baggage. Again, that was out of that old right-of-center campaign. And this is what Donna Brazile's book, Hack, is actually all about. And the DMC, I was hoping to have the ad lady, Emma Young, on here. We'll get her on to talk about this. But the amounts of money that this muck operation or whatever spent with African-owned stations, broadcast stations, African ad agencies, was minuscule, less than 1%. So in other words, this was the thing, a situation to exclude followers of O.J. Simpson from the works of the campaign in terms of strategists, etc., but at the same time to go out and vote and ask for the votes. Didn't work in Milwaukee. The people, they understood what was going on. They understood why they were not voting, and they also understood that they were electing the gangster, as we call him. That's DJ Trump. Gangsters in the White House. These fools are standing out there in the line looking up. I'll clean that up a little bit, as Jesse would say. They came to the river and dropped their rod. And hopefully you didn't get hit by lightning. But anyway, this is where we are on the 5th of November, 2017. We'll go on to Donna Brazile and her book, Hacked. And you can bet people ran out, like myself, got this copy. And the Bernie people are looking. Now, how this will affect Virginia? Well, Virginia, the race there, Northam ran against one of our progressives. The party organization there got the vote out for Northam. But this is a very, very close race. It'll all turn out in a turnout. Let me just get the current figures up here, and we'll see precisely when we get the right pointer at the right screen. The latest we've got out. It's all over the place. It's in the margin of error, basically, there in Virginia, and you can pick and choose which poll you want to follow. We got one. This is the New York Times poll. I got Norfolk up by 3, but that's the margin of error. That's today. And we had a Gravis poll. That's a Republican poll. Has Norfolk up by 5. And Trafalgar Group poll has Norfolk up by 1. And if we go back to Friday, the polling company, that's the Republican operation, has Gillespie up by 3. And Rasmussen has it tied up. Well, anytime you get into the infamous margin of error, 3.5 either way, what we do know is Gillespie, a party hack, of course he's ran statewide in Virginia before, and barely lost to Senator Warner, who is one of these so-called moderate Democrats, playing basically to the center-right operation. The problem Democrats have with center-right, they hold a slot, yes. Now, to their whatever swagger, they have managed, even the center-right Republicans like Senator Meacham of West Virginia, to hold steady on the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. Republicans, incidentally, are running other machinations. This is the result of center-right. They want to get rid of Obamacare, the nation's health care program. Well, what progressives obviously have to do is build grassroots to get a single payer. Now, the Republicans, yes, they have power now, and that shows you what right of center does. So the Republicans went just right of center, and they're running willy-nilly with their tax bills, all this sort of stuff. They've done this before. The other element that they added this time, they just got alt-right and the fascists in there and told everybody that, and they have to have White House Chief of Staff congratulating old Lee, who wasn't, as if John Nance Garner would say, wasn't worth a pot of spit. They used to chew tobacco, and that sort of stuff. But anyway, this is basically where these characters are. So this is what is happening when we talk about side issues. Things are changing, and Donna's book will have an impact with the other books that are out there on how the malfeasance on the part of the Monsters campaign was there. Now, this whole Russian hack scam to begin with is a distraction in that is basically more on Cold War type stuff, and now the Cold War is disappearing. So people are going to have to get around that. Trump was going to totally throw it out the window with his American First policy, but then he's back to trying to do a little bit of Cold War at the same time. But the whole thing is that is outdated. Period's outdated. So the next year, few years, we're going to be grappling what happens in 2018. We don't know. In 2020, what effect this will have. A line of candidates there, but they're going to have to address the progressive wing that is in the Democratic Party, or people like us will move to a third party, and their ability to win without us, that has been demonstrated there. As to Monster, now that was a very close election, about 80,000 votes, but things are shaping up. Look at Ohio. That is where work needs to be done. Donna Brazile, of course, on Stephanopoulos' program, was talking about that. Couldn't even get a damn post in Louisiana to the Big Easy. That is the reason that they've had all these problems that they have, losing all these state houses because of not putting any resources in it. And we see that. We've incidentally, the Seattle mayoral race is on many of these channels. Do in fact tune into it, listen to it, to debate there at the People's Party, and we have a little commentary on it. Ms. Moon, who we endorse there, against Jenny Durkham, who is one of quote-unquote DNC type candidate. But those types of solutions don't deal with the people. When you got 50% of the people that live in Seattle, a very gentrified city, that make under $50,000 a year. Now that may sound like some money, but not in Seattle, where the median price of the house is $850,000 at least. So, in other words, being gentrified out of business. The Democratic Party and Democratic types are moving on gentrification. That will never solve our problems, period. We have to be more about human issues. That's why Bernie would have won the campaign. The Clinton people were going on old hack. They weren't even going on the prescription of Barack Obama in 2007 or 2012. As Barack Obama admitted, it was not his kind of campaign. They did not have, first of all, they had a lackluster candidate, but really did not have the charisma against a DJ Trump. But on top of that, all of these other issues, the Hillary server, that was shooting in the foot. She didn't need a server. She should have stuck with AOL. Nonetheless, this is Old Boston Red here on the 5th of November, 2007. We'll talk to you on the Monday morning quarterback, and we're also working on Catalona. We'll get that one up here shortly. And an open source report. Good day from WBRN Radio in Boston and on the Boston Red Network.
Hacks, the inside story of the break-ins and breakdowns that put Donald Trump in the White House. Brazile claims the DNC gave Hillary Clinton an unfair edge over Bernie Sanders, and reveals she considered replacing Clinton as the nominee after Clinton fainted at a 9/11 ceremony. The ticket I like most, she writes, was Joe Biden and New Jersey Senator Cory Booker. I felt certain that combination would win the general election. And Donna Brazile, who has also been a longtime ABC contributor, joins us now. Welcome back, Donna.
Thank you, George.
Let's get some facts on the table first. As DNC chair, you didn't have the power on your own to replace Hillary on the ticket.
No, but as you well know, the charter of the DNC, as well as the conventional rules, say that the chairperson shall, in consultation with the leadership in Congress and others. And so I had to put it on the table, George, because I was under tremendous pressure after Secretary Clinton fainted to have a quote-unquote plan B. I didn't want a plan B. Plan A was great for me. I supported Hillary, and I wanted her to win, but we were under pressure.
So how serious was this? You write that you got a call from Vice President Biden at the time. Did you mention this to the Vice President?
No, I did not. I mean, look, everybody was calling to see, do you know anything? How is she doing? And of course, my job at the time, George, was to reassure people, not just the vice president, but also reassure the Democratic Party, the members of the party, that Hillary was doing fine and that she will resume her campaign in the following week.
Do you still think that Biden and Booker would have won?
Well, you know, I had a lot of other combinations. This was something that you play out in your mind. But at the time, I was sitting next to Charlie Baker, who was her chief administrator.
Clinton's campaign.
Yeah, that's right. And Charlie and I put down, and we had a lot of rumors coming. I had the former chair of the DNC calling me, Donald Fowler Senior, what are you doing? Look, the bottom line is she resumed campaigning. I went on TV to say that the campaign was back on track.
As you can imagine, there's been quite a reaction to this, including this open letter from the Hillary for America 2016 team signed by about 100 people. They say they were shocked to learn that you were considering this, and they go on to say, it is particularly troubling and puzzling that she would seemingly buy into false Russian-fueled propaganda spread by both the Russians and our opponent about our candidate's health.
Well, George, at the time, like I said, I talked with Charlie Baker, but as it relates to that...
Did you mention this idea to him?
No, I kept my own counsel. I'm the chair of the party, George, and I decided I wanted to be up front with someone inside the campaign, and Charlie was there sitting across from me. But let me just address what my former colleagues... I wasn't a staff person. I did not work for the Hillary Clinton campaign. I was not on their daily strategy calls. I had nothing to do with their data analytics. I was the chair of the Democratic National Committee. I was concerned about the entire party, not just the presidential, but the senatorial, congressional, and all of the other
From the sound of it, it sounds like you had a pretty dysfunctional relationship with the high command in Hillary's campaign. You even talk about telling them at some point, I'm not Patsey the slave.
Oh, George, let me tell you something. I could not control the purse string of the Democratic Party, and I had to figure out what was going on within the party, that the chair of the party, and remember, I wasn't just the chair, I'm also a vice chair. I was an officer for 8 years. 8 years under President Obama. I knew what was going on within the party. I become chair and I'm trying to write a check for something. I raised the money and they're like, you got to get signed off from Brooklyn. I said, Brooklyn? This wasn't a standard joint fundraising agreement. They had a separate memorandum of understanding, and I needed to break that. But in order to break it, I would cause a great commotion. So, yeah, I'm not Patsey the slave because I got sick and tired of people telling me how to spend money when all I was trying to do, I wasn't getting a salary. I was basically volunteering my time. And what I was trying to do, George, was to increase the level of enthusiasm and passion for Hillary Clinton and the rest of the ticket all across the country.
They also take exception to your description of the campaign right now as an antiseptic, sterile campaign inside the headquarters. A lot of people saying that is not the campaign they knew.
Well, you know what? They should take a page from Hillary's book, take a look inside of what they did last year, and then they should write their own book. Hillary wrote a book, which I enjoy reading, was part memoir. It was a history book. I love reading her book. If they don't like my book, don't buy it. But let me just say this. I have every right as a former chair of the party. Next year, I will celebrate almost 50 years in American politics. The Democratic Party is 170 years old.
I get that, but how do you respond? It's not just the Clinton campaign. You know, there's a lot of traffic on Twitter right now. I've gotten emails from Democrats, passionate Democrats, who say they feel betrayed by all this. Any regrets?
Do I regret taking on a job the second time in my life as chair of the party, cleaning up everybody's mess, taking all of the income in, being unable to spend funds that I raised? Do I regret being on the road 100% of the time, being hacked by the Russians, being harassed, getting death threats? Do I regret any of that? George, this was worse than Hurricane Katrina in terms of the emotional toll. But do I regret standing up for what's right, helping Hillary Clinton, helping the Democratic Party? And let me just say this. As somebody who went through the hacking experience, being able to tell the truth about what happened with the Russians, the attack on our government, do I regret any of that? No, I wish I could have done more, George.
But do you think this helps for the book to come out?
Well, George, I mean, this is a lesson of 2016. If I released it next year, they would say, Donna, you're impacting on 2018. If I release it the following, Donna, you're impacting. George, for those who are telling me to shut up, they told Hillary that a couple of months ago. You know what I tell them? Go to hell. I'm going to tell my story. I want to tell my story, George, because this is a story of a young girl who started in American politics at the age of 9, who continues to fight each and every week of her life. I went down to Virginia last week to kick off the canvassing campaign. Nobody paid me to do that. Nobody, I'm not on the payroll, George. I care about my country. I care about our democracy. And I say go to hell because why am I supposed to be the only person that is unable to tell my story? Now, I've heard a lot of people tell me various things as well, but here's what they don't know. They don't know what it was like to be over at the DNC during this hacking. They don't know what it's like to bury a child. I did, Seth Rich. They don't know what it's like to protect the staff from further harassment. They don't know what it's like because the high command of Brooklyn, the people who were making the decisions, even for the DNC, they didn't come and work with us. They told us to shut up and basically let them win the election. And when we tried to intervene, we had to spend money we raised to try to help them win. And that was my job as chair of the party.
Pretty clear you have no regrets at all right there. You just mentioned Seth Rich, who, of course, was killed during the campaign. Did you feel under threat?
Every day, especially when Donald Trump, when Donald Trump would go out there and tweet. You know, look, I've worked on campaigns all my adult life. I've been called some of the worst things in America. But when Donald Trump would go out there and attack me, the threats were just unbearable. My house right now I got every different kind of security device. I had to get my home swept. I had to get the DNC swept twice. It was horrible.
As you know, he's tweeting again based on your book. Just the other day, he put out the real story on collusion is in Donna B's new book. Crooked Hillary bought the DNC and then stole the Democratic primary from crazy Bernie.
Well, Donald Trump likes to distract. I mean, what Donald Trump should be focusing on right now is protecting our country from being hacked again. He should be working with Congress to ensure that the American people will feel confident that we are going to have a good election season in 2017, 2018. Donald Trump loves to distract us and divide us. I'm not playing this game.
He wants an investigation in the Department of Justice.
Well, I think he needs to look in his own house before he tries to clean up someone else's house.
Do you think this joint fundraising agreement was anything illegal at all?
As I said at the time, George, I did not like the fact that there was an additional memorandum that spelled out what the Clinton campaign could do in exchange for bailing the Democratic Party out. I give Secretary Clinton credit for bailing the Democratic Party out because we were in debt.
But I've seen the email traffic, and it appears from at least one email that the Sanders campaign was offered the exact same term. They could also negotiate an agreement of their own if they raised more money. They chose not to.
The Sanders campaign set up a joint fundraising account as well, but they chose not to put money in it. But they also chose to allow the DNC to control what little funds they did put in it. This was a separate, what this was an additional memorandum.
Right, but they were offered that same thing. Here's the email. If you're raising significantly more than the amount to cover the voter file for the DNC staff would be happy to chat with the Sanders team and come to an understanding about the best way to use those funds to prepare for the general election at the DNC. So they were offered a similar chance.
George, when I found out the reason why the chair of the party, the chair of the Democratic National Committee, could not spend the funds, I found the agreement myself. This is the agreement they put out. This is the agreement I found. And what I tried to do, George, was to work within the parameters of this agreement so that I could hire staff, so that I could spend money that we raised, and so that I could help Hillary and Tim Kaine and all of the other Democrats win. As for any agreements or side agreements they had with Senator Sanders, I've never seen that before, George.
Do you agree with Elizabeth Warren that the primaries were rigged?
I don't think she meant the word rigged, because what I said, George, as you well know, after I left this show back on July 24th, I said I would get to the bottom of everything. And that's what I did. And I called Senator Sanders to say, you know, I wanted to make sure there was no rigging in the process. I'm on the Rules and Bylaws Committee. I found no evidence, none whatsoever. The only thing I found, which I said I found the cancer, but I'm not killing the patient, was this memorandum that prevented the DNC from running its own operations.
You also write about that email where you appear to share questions with the Clinton campaign from a debate on CNN. We're showing it up on the screen right now. And in the past, you said that sending those emails was a mistake you'll forever regret. But in the book, it seems you're still not sure you sent this email.
Well, George, I mean, when you're hacked, I mean, look, I have 7 email accounts, maybe more. When you're hacked and you don't know, I'm the only person in America that had to go and look and say, okay, where is it? Where is it? I knew I'd sent emails, of course, George.
So you're not denying that you sent this email?
George, I'm not. First of all, I said straight up, I said, look, if this was sent, I know why I sent it. I apologize. I spent the entire month of August apologizing for the leaked, hacked emails, which is a crime. And so far, no one has been charged with the crime. But I've apologized. I said, I'm sorry. But here's what I also say in the book that I thought was very helpful to the reader, and that is to tell people during this time when we were under pressure to add more debates to the schedule, I went out to get more debates. Well, CNN was the beneficiary of those debates, but I wanted more diversity. I wanted more diverse voices. And yes, I wanted issues that people cared about. People were, as you recall, Black Lives Matter. They were marching in the streets. They wanted us to address criminal justice reform. And yes, when CNN agreed to go to Flint, Michigan, we wanted to have a conversation about the water crisis. All of that's in the memo. All of that's in the book.
Did you ever share questions with the Sanders campaign?
Let me tell you something, George, and I also have in a book that even on occasions when I knew the topics on ABC, I even talked to the Republicans about what the topics would be. I shared with everybody because, you know what, I wanted the best information possible. The second thing is I didn't want the candidates shocked by the nature of the questions. For the first time, we were going to go beyond, talking about the usual issues that animate Democratic primaries, and we were going to talk about issues that concern Black Lives Matter.
You have some tough words for the leaders of your party in here in the book as well. And here's what you write. We've had 3 Democratic parties, the party of Barack Obama, the party of Hillary Clinton, and the weak little vestige of a party led by Debbie that was doing a very poor job getting people who are not president elected. These 3 titanic egos, Barack, Hillary, and Debbie, have stripped the party to a shell for their own purposes.
Well, over 1,000 state legislative seats. And by the way, I take responsibility too, George. I'm a Democrat. We've lost thousands of state legislative seats. We've lost gubernatorial seats. But we have an opportunity on Tuesday in New Jersey and Virginia to fight back. to regain some of the lost ground over the last 10 years. And that's what I'm hoping will happen. Every voter should know out there that their vote counts. Their voice must be heard. I encourage them to get out and vote next week in Virginia and New Jersey, and later on in Alabama, where I'll be in Alabama by the end of the month. It's important that everybody votes. Yes, I take a hard hit at people within the party because I love my party, I love my country, and I'm going to continue to fight for it.
Continue to fight for it. And are you confident now that the Democratic Party can be fixed, and what's the most important thing it needs to do?
Well, first of all, I am very confident that Tom Perez is leading in the right direction. We have a unity commission that is going to examine all of the things I raised about the primary contest and the caucus system. We have Keith Ellison and others who are energizing the grassroots. The party is making a substantial investment in the states. And, George, one of the things that bothered me especially in the Patsey, the slave chapter, I got some controversial chapters, I understand, but anybody from Louisiana know that I'm going to put some hot sauce on every page, and if it's not dripping with something that's hot and spicy, it's not me. But, George, what I'm most confident of is that we now have a party that is invested in all 50 states. You know, imagine you're the chair of the party. I'm from Louisiana. I am from the South, and I cannot get one poster outside of Florida, Virginia, and North Carolina to go home to Louisiana or Mississippi or Alabama. I can't send any resources to those states. I'm the chair of the party. And by the way, I didn't ask to be chair, George. When I left your show on July 24th, I thought I was getting ready to go out and have a nice brunch. Instead, I was called to say, Donna, we need you to step up again. And I did.
It has been some year. Donna Brazile, thanks very much.
It's always a pleasure, George.